I've used the spider as an analogy of who's controlling the center of the web,
Mhm.
and that spider, not literally, but symbolically, is not human. It's in the end, it doesn't even take form. It's a very inverted state of awareness, which, in its extreme form, is what people in our society call psychopaths. It's psychopathic, and if this deeply inverted, distorted state of awareness takes control of you, then you become psychopathic. You lose, which is what psychopaths don't have, you lose empathy. You lose the ability to empathize and put yourself in the feelings of others that you are affecting, and thus you have no emotional consequence for anything that you do. This is why I've said many times over the years, it's a big mistake to judge what you would do by what this hidden hand would do, because it's not the same. If you have empathy, you couldn't order, you know, the innocent to be pepper bombed from the sky day after day after day. You couldn't. You couldn't have people going hungry in a world of plenty. You couldn't abuse children. Your empathetic fail-safe mechanism would never even allow you to go near that. You'd be too horrified, too emotionally affected. But if you don't have empathy, which, like I say, psychopaths don't, it's the key element of a psychopathic personality, then you will do that, and not only will you do it, you'll get off on it.
Mm.
And so we're not dealing with a state of awareness that is what people would normally interact with. I mean, you know, there are a lot of psychopaths in general society, but when you have extreme psychopaths making the decisions of what happens in the world, not least militarily and financially, etc., then you are in a situation that can manifest nothing but the world that we live in, which is one of extraordinarily the wealth concentration now is extraordinary. You're looking at tens of people owning the wealth that vast tracts and percentages of the world population together don't own. So, you know, we're going in this direction of the concentration of power and the concentration of wealth that comes with the concentration of power. And you do that by psychopathic behavior, by having no problem with screwing people financially, so you throw them on the street, with fixing mortgage documents so that you throw people off the street out of houses you don't even own and have a mortgage on, whereby you'll bomb without thought of the consequences anywhere and anyone that you think will advance what you desire, what you're trying to make happen. And we have allowed those people, that awareness, to take control of the direction of the world. And this is why I do shake my head sometimes when I see people that call themselves spiritual, who say we must let go of fear, who then will criticize people for exposing these things because they say it's too negative. Well, what happened to letting go of fear? You know, I tell you what's negative: ignorance. Because ignorance allows the few to impose itself on the many through the ignorance of the many of what's going on and who's behind it. Ignorance is the negative thing, not knowledge of what's going on. There might be knowledge of how we'd like it to be, but there's also knowledge of what is, and we have to be mature enough, and yes, if you want to use that term, spiritually awake enough, to actually face it and deal with it instead of running away and saying, shut up, don't want to hear it. And you know, what I found over the years, when I first went to America, and this is in kind of just past 1995, yeah, maybe 96 was the first time that this happened. And I went out to America to talk, and I talked to nobody. I was talking in people's front rooms and stuff like that. And I remember at one point, I did get asked to go and speak at what were then called Whole Life Expos. They were big, like, New Age events with multiple speakers over like 3 days or so. And I was the strange bloke from Britain who was talking about conspiracy. When they put me on late at night when everyone had gone home, and the big speakers were the people talking about, you know, spirituality and what have you. And I remember the first one I went to was in Denver, and I walked into this vast warehouse where it was being held, and there were stores and what have you all over it, with people selling things and doing demonstrations on various things, all very nice. But I remember standing in the middle of that hall that day, and I said to someone who was with me, this energy's dead. This energy's going nowhere. You know why? Because it was an energy that wouldn't face reality. You know, we can talk about spirituality in one way, but in another, for many people, it's a form of escape. It's a way of escaping from the world. I don't think we come into this reality to then try to persuade ourselves we haven't. There's something going on. We need to face it. Understanding the nature of reality and how it works is absolutely essential to changing it, because it's the manipulation of that reality by people that do know how it works that is behind the conspiracy and the ability of the few to control the many. But if you just stop at the level of looking at things on the point of well, I'm going no further because it gets a bit unpleasant from here on in, then we're not going to change anything, and it becomes a means of escape, not a means to change anything. And within a very short time after I did that Denver event, the whole Life Expo arena just collapsed in a matter of years, one after the other. There were two groups, and they both went eventually, because the cutting edge was moving, it was shifting, and what was coming in on one side was this, what you might call Christian patriot perception, belief system, that could see on one level that the world was being controlled by forces that were not the ones that people thought were in control, that there was something behind governments. They could see that. But the foundation of that belief system was basically American patriotism and Christianity, which is fair enough. If people want to believe that, well, they can believe it. And there was this big gulf between the two. Is one of the reasons why if you like, the New Age arena was rejecting that explanation of the conspiracy, because there was such a belief system chasm. But what's happening, and this is what I've been trying to do all these last nearly 30 years, is to bring those two things together, to realize, yes, there is a conspiracy. Yes, there is an incredibly distorted, dark, if you want to use that term, force manipulating human perception, and through that manipulating human society. But at the same time, to understand that and how it works and how we overcome it is also to understand the nature of reality itself, which a lot of the Christian patriot side of it did not want to look at, because it was deemed not biblical, not supported by the Bible. Therefore, it can't be true. And yet, ironically, when you look at biblical texts, they talk about a manipulating force that's manipulating human society and human perception. They call them in the Bible demons, for instance. And you have the Islamic belief system, which has a similar concept, which they call jinn. And then you have the Gnostic belief system, which called the same force archons, or manipulators, deceivers in the unseen. So actually, if people would just breathe and let their minds wander a little, then you'll see that what appeared to be a Christian patriot conspiracy polarity, and what appeared to be New Age spiritual polarity, actually, if they would just both open their minds to expand beyond their belief system, then they would see that there is an enormous amount of common ground and common perception, but using different language. And it's bringing this together. This is why my books never talk about the conspiracy without the nature of reality and the nature of who we are, because the conspiracy, if you look deep in the shadows where it's really coming from, is founded on that force understanding how reality works and how human perception creates it, and on the other side, keeping that knowledge from the target population. Because if our perceptions, and I explain in the books how this works, it's just a matter of physics, basically. Because our perceptions manifest our reality, it means that if you can control someone's perception, and in terms of humanity, collectively control their perception, you're controlling their experience reality. You know, if I program this computer with certain data, I can dictate what comes on the screen or not. The computer's not dictating it; it's doing what the coding's telling it to do. And for coding, read manipulating human perception of reality. So the whole stadium on which this is played, both the enslavement and the freedom, is perception. It's perceptions that have to change. How many times do you see a revolution change the people in power, but not what happens? Only the people doing it change, because the perception that ran the revolution was basically another expression of the perception that the revolution wished to overthrow, and so they changed personnel, but they didn't change reality. They didn't change society. The only revolutions that ever change anything are revolutions of perception, because that does change everything. It has to change when perception changes. And this is where the whole thing is being played out. And we can talk about banking scams. We should. We can talk about the manipulation of 9/11 and manipulated wars, etc. But we need to know that, because that's all part of the perception deception. But in the end, it's human perception that has to change. I mean, if I'm in a room now with people, and my perception is that, I'm antagonistic towards those people, and I have to fight those people, and they have a different opinion from me, so I have to impose my will upon them, and I have to tell them how ridiculous and bad they are because they have a different opinion from me, then there's a certain experience that's going to happen. It's not going to be very nice. But if I say to the same people, hey, I don't agree with you, but I respect your right to have your opinion. Let's hear what you've got to say. Well, this is what I feel. I don't believe what you believe, but, let's have a chat. This is what I believe. What do you think? Then we're going to have a nice experience. It doesn't mean we're going to agree, but we're going to have a nice experience. And the only thing that's changed between the two is the perceptions of the situation. And so what we have now, manipulated systematically and mercilessly, not least through the colleges and universities, is the perception now among what are called ironically progressive when they're regressive, is that only their opinion has validity. Thus anyone who has a different opinion must by definition be wrong, and must by definition be a bigot, a racist, and deeply unpleasant. This is what's happening now. The polarities are being created, and so-called progressive people, and there'll be a lot of these progressives that were, in what was once called the New Age movement, who are actually the very inversion of what they claim to be. They talk about diversity when they want to destroy diversity by silencing people they don't agree with. I mean, it's a form of mental illness, and I'm not. I don't say that in terms of, just a throwaway line. Oh yeah, symbolically they're mentally ill. I say literally it's a form of mental illness if you define mental illness as an incapacity to think outside of your own opinion, of your own dogma. And that's what we're looking at. If you can't think outside your own dogma, that's only one level of it. That's fair enough. You've got a closed mind. But when you then say, and anyone that doesn't have a closed mind like me and doesn't believe what I believe and have the opinions that I have, I must attack, I must abuse, I must shut down and silence, then I think you're moving into the realms of mental illness.